Good evening. Let me call to order the regular meeting of council for Monday, March 15th, 2021. And begin with I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll pause now for a moment of silence. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bullock,
Yes, here.
Keppel,
Here.
Litton,
Here.
Neff,
Here.
O'Malley,
Here.
Rader,
Here.
Shackner.
Here.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held March 1st, 2021.
Move to dispose of these minutes without the necessity of a reading.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry, Jason. Madam Clerk, before we go on to the section 4 and old business, I just I know that there are a number of members of the public who are on this evening who are seeking to speak. If you're here to speak for a particular agenda item, we will be calling on you during the disposition of that item. If you're here to speak on a general topic that's not an actual docket item tonight, that portion is actually at the end of the meeting. It's not a particularly long agenda tonight, but just want to give folks a heads up on that timing. Okay, we can proceed with regular business now, Madam.
Mr. President, I know that Tina and Michael Dolotowski are here from Lion and Blue.
Oh, very good. Well, let's move that item to the front then. We have a communication and a resolution, items 8 and 9. If there's no objection from council, I will move those items to the front of the agenda. And seeing no objection, Madam Clerk.
Item 8, communication from council members Shackner and Litton regarding 25th anniversary of Lion and Blue.
Excuse me, Councilmember Shackner. This is your award. So.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Tina and Michael. And Michael, for being here. Just want to say, I think I speak for everybody here that it's hard to imagine Lakewood without Lion and Blue being here. I know I walked by it, or when I lived closer to it, I used to walk by it every day, and I know I have a nice donkey in my office that I purchased there a while back. Kind of an impulse buy, but it's hard not to looking through that window. And really the impetus of this was a friend and colleague, Miss Paula Reed, did contact Councilmember Litton. And this Councilmember Litton was kind enough to also forward that along to me. Really wanting to honor you and your contributions to this city. And I think it was pretty easy to write this, provided the information that Ms. Reed provided us. And I'd like to thank our clerk of council, Ms. Maureen Bach, for drafting this. It's a very lovely resolution. So with that, if anybody else if Councilmember Litton would like to add anything, I know Councilmember Bullock is a big fan of Lion and Blue. That's all I have to say.
Litton.
I'll just, echo Councilmember Shackner's thoughts that it's sort of a mainstay of Lakewood. You've bailed me out and saved me a few different times in my life, and we're just thankful you're a part of our fine city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's
Mr.
see.
President,
Yes.
Thank you. I, as a former Ward 2 councilman and also a neighbor from that neighborhood, I know Tina and Mike from years of not just being in the neighborhood, but also Lakewood Alive board service and Downtown Lakewood Business Alliance. You two have been really model citizens for our downtown merchants, helping to address any issues with how sidewalk flows, how the refuse is picked up, and how we present our downtown, and just supporting merchants. That's really been central to the success of our community, is making our downtown so welcoming. And it's exactly merchants like you. It's artisan, locally owned businesses with personality, with commitment, with uniqueness that makes Lakewood such a joy to all of us. And we're glad you're here. It's no easy thing to keep and run a business, not let alone for 25 years. And Mike, I know you craft jewelry and do all kinds of unique creative things. So everybody, when your next anniversary rolls around, you know who to call. Keep on keeping on. Let us know what we can do. And congratulations.
Appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
It's a wonderful
Appreciate
community
the
to be a
honor.
part of. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the floor is yours if there's anything else you'd like to say, Tina and Mike.
Well,
Just that we're happy to be in this community. It's very supportive
even all through last year.
of our business, even through last year. And we hope to be here for 25 more. God
Good.
willing. So thank you. Thanks for the honor. Totally appreciate it.
You're here.
Kind words.
All right, we will we'll take up the vote here. Let me move to receive and file the communication first.
Second.
Motion on the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 9, Resolution 2021-12, a resolution to recognize Lion in Blue on its 25th anniversary as a flagship retailer on Lakewood's Detroit Avenue.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion in the second. Any discussion on this? All right, Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
And that resolution passes, is adopted. And again, Tina and Mike, we want to thank you, and we'll get you a big fancy version of this resolution as soon as we can. And I'm sure you'll hang it right behind the register. So thank you again for being here and for all you do for our community. All right, Madam Clerk, next item.
All right, back to item 1.
Yes.
Item 1, report from Public Works and Sustainability Committee.
Chairman Reed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, Public Work and Sustainability Committee meeting met on March 8th. All members of the committee were present, including, in addition to Roman Duku, the Public Works Director, Engineer Papke, Chief Dunphy, as well as members of the public. The committee discussed Resolution 2021-10, which authorizes the city to accept $25,000 from the Metro, from Cleveland Metro Parks to contribute towards the all-purpose trail that will connect the Detroit-Solo neighborhood with the Metro Parks. This agreement further stipulates that the Metro Parks will remove snow and litter from the trail. The committee discussed the project and how it fits into our neighborhood there. And we also had present Sean McDermott, who spoke to the item, and also just had a general discussion about how this project's going to proceed, and some of the Councilman Bullock brought up, I think very importantly, that will be for the public discussion that'll happen around this intersection, and a lot of public input will be sought as we move forward. This plan has been going on for a very long time to make this intersection just much more functional, much more walkable, and also much safer, as this walkway will also be separated from traffic. And it's just going to be a great project as we move into this year and next year. So we we recommended that this resolution be adopted unanimously, and I'll go ahead and move to receive and file this communications. Yours truly.
Okay, I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 2, Resolution 2021-10, a resolution to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a grant agreement with Cleveland Metro Parks for the construction and maintenance of the Detroit Connector Trail and All-Purpose Trail, and accepting funds in the amount of $25,000 toward the project construction costs.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Director Horgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, and I'll confirm this with the council clerk, but I believe that there is a substitute version of this ready to be passed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I shared that with council on Friday. And it's
Okay.
also Granicus.
Was this, what, it wasn't substituted in committee though, right? No? Okay, I'll move to substitute.
Second.
Motion and second. Director Horgan, what's the nature of the substitution?
Mr. Chairman, and I believe Director Leininger is more briefed on this than I am, but I believe it just takes out the word grant. I don't believe this is a grant. The county got a hold of us and indicated that it's a minor change. And Director Leininger, can you expound on it more?
Yes, I could. Thank you, Director. Council President O'Malley, members of council. So as Director Corrigan had mentioned, Metro Parks had reached out and asked I think it's in the third line of the resolution. It says grant agreement. They've asked to strike the word grant. Certainly they're contributing to this project, but as a contribution to help enhance their infrastructure as we make improvements to our infrastructure. And so the word grant just gave an incorrect connotation of what type of agreement this is. And so they respectfully asked that we strike that word from the resolution.
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilman Raider.
Thank you. Just to clarify, because this came about after the committee meeting or hearing, does this at all change how the money is to be distributed to the city and what it is to be spent on? I mean, I assumed sort of in the meeting that this was going to be a direct payment to the city and then would go to the overall cost of that trail, adding that trail to the south side of Detroit, kind of ending there at Gerber. But does this change at all how that transaction, or would that change kind of how I laid out what I thought this was going to be?
No, Mr. President, Councilman Raider, no, there's no changes to the fundamentals of the project, what the money's for, how the money comes into the project. It's really just almost a semantics issue with the word grant being included in the resolution. So nothing has changed from how it was represented to the committee.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. There's a motion and a second to substitute. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
That motion passes. I'll move to adopt.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item.
Item 3, report from Finance Committee meeting held today, March 15th, 2021.
Chairman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of council, today the Finance Committee met and considered 2 ordinances, both of which I'll start with the spoiler, both of which were recommended for adoption, one with a substitute version. we considered first the quarterly transfers and advances ordinance, which is ordinance 11-2021. 4 times a year, we have transfers to dispose of. This is all ministerial work to execute the annual budget. And in this case, we've got a blend of routine and unique transfers. The routine ones are for the Office on Aging, for hospitalization, workers' comp for certain employees of the city, for wastewater treatment, debt service payments paid for by the wastewater treatment plant for capital projects, roads, and pipes underneath the road from years past, and other purposes. And then two one-time transfers for the Lakewood Fire Station number 2 and the Cove Intergenerational Church and Center projects. And then the advances are, in layperson's terms, a cash flow reconciliation measure. When we close our books on December 31 of a given year, certain funds such as the CDBG fund, the Winterhurst fund, and several others need to be reconciled. So the general fund temporarily advances or loans some funds to those, some dollars to those funds. Today, in this proposed ordinance, we're about to consider those funds return that temporary loan to the general fund to make it whole. We'll see some of these again in the second and third quarters and in the fourth quarter as well. And we'll also get advances in the other direction in our fourth quarter advance or proposed ordinance. So the committee heard all of that, recommended adoption to the full council. Second, we had a good discussion on ordinance 3-2021. This is for authorizing equipment leases as listed in the proposed substitute. And in this case, it's vehicles. All of this is to execute our previously adopted 2021 budget. The new tool recommended by the administration here to use on a small scale is vehicle leases in the sense of a long-term rental for the purposes of getting a new vehicle without taking on the potential maintenance costs. Also being able to get a new vehicle to replace some vehicles needed, but also give ourselves flexibility in years 3, 4, 5 to potentially replace it with something else. We had a lengthy discussion. This is a new approach considered by the city. Other cities have increasingly adopted this. Public Works leadership recommended that we try this out on a small scale. I think that is sensible to see if it's financially successful and operationally successful. And so that was what they proposed and we recommended. We also had a discussion about the potential clean and alternatively fueled vehicle version of this. In this proposed ordinance, there are 5 hybrid police cruisers proposed to be purchased for the city. That's up from the one we already have in operation that's been performing well in 2020. We talked about the potential to build upon that. I certainly support doing so, and appreciated the Public Works Director's openness to analyzing that and charting out a plan for ramping up adoption, since there's clean air impacts of our vehicle operations that are considerable to complement the good work that we're doing on operating our buildings. Long report, but appreciate the time and the attention. Move to receive and file that oral report.
Second. Discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Schachner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 4, ordinance 11, 2021, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the transfer in advance of certain funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Schachner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 5, ordinance 3, 2021, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into equipment leases and forms approved by the Director of Law on behalf of the City of Lakewood.
Move to adopt.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, yes, sir.
We've got a substitute to consider for this.
You did not substitute. Did you substitute in committee, Councilman?
We recommended adoption of the substitute.
Then I will, if there's no further substitutions beyond that, I'll move to adopt as substituted.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Schachner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 6, ordinance 10, 2021, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the Director of Planning and Development or the mayor to enter into an agreement with a licensed real estate broker to market for sale the real property located at 1461 St. Charles Avenue and 1458 Bell Avenue for a period of 180 days pursuant to section 15507 of the codified ordinances.
Is there a substitution for this ordinance?
There's not.
There's not. Okay, move to adopt.
Second.
Let me just say, I totally support this ordinance. I think it accomplishes, I mean, it may seem like just an ordinance to get these assets off our books, but it really accomplishes so many of our strategic goals as a city. And most significantly, that it's going to make available some middle-class homes to prospective buyers. And it also has some provisions built in that prevent it from being gobbled up by some flippers. And, I really think that I've certainly gone by these homes. Actually, my best friend in high school lived in one of these homes. And, this is going to be, I think, a really great thing that we're making these properties available. So, I remember the days when I first got on council when you'd have to put something up for sale for a period of 180 days, and the administration would have to come back for council to ask for an extension of the authorization. I don't think that's going to happen here. But in any event, there's a motion and a second to adopt. Any further discussion? All right.
Mr. Chair, Mr. President,
Councilman Bullock.
just briefly, agree with everything you just said. These are the first two, the ordinance proposed, just a clarification question. I think I missed the committee discussion, so sorry for that. This proposes to sell the first two of 9 total properties, correct? And I think we had previously deliberated upon the value of spreading these out over time. But the other thing is we just approved transferring out of the land acquisition fund a significant amount, $3.5 million. We've talked as a concept about using the proceeds of this sale, of the sale of these assets as a source of replenishing the land acquisition fund, which has value to the city to be able to rapidly and be responsive to redevelopment opportunities or land acquisition opportunities, such as for the church on Detroit Avenue. So I see value to that concept still. I don't know if we've put in action anything formal beyond those discussions. I'd welcome a comment from the administration if you've got one, or maybe just flag that for a future deliberation. Do we have an intended use of the proceeds of these properties once sold?
Good question. Whoever wants to take that.
Mr. President, Councilman Bullock. So first, the funds will actually be used in replenish the hospital fund, as those were where the funds were originally, or everything that's associated with these projects, these homes is related to the hospital fund. So any proceeds we receive will go into that account. And yes, to your point, yes, we are looking at opportunities for how we can reinvest these funds into the community. There's been a number of topics that have been discussed over my short time here, from the Curtis Block to, well, primarily the Curtis Block, since these are hospital funds. So they need to stay related to that general location, subject to council approval for anything else. But that's yes, it is something we're thinking through and have on our minds as well.
Great. And what's the process for marketing these for sale? Do we do like what the procurement process for a realtor, for example?
So we were going to issue an RFP to solicit realtors with a preference being on those that have Lakewood experience, but then even more so those that have are residents here of our community, and then brokered with brokers here in our community. The goal is to share each one of these with a different realtor, so each realtor gets an opportunity to kind of, I guess, spread the wealth, if you will, amongst the real estate community, which we have a number of them in our community. So let's support them as well.
Great. All right, there's a motion and a second to adopt. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Block,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner,
Yes.
That motion passes. The ordinance is adopted.
Item 7, substitute ordinance 12, 2021, an ordinance to take effect immediately to expand rental rights within the city of Lakewood, allowing renters who tender their full rent plus any additional late fees and court costs prior to an eviction hearing to avoid eviction for late payment of rent, and setting reasonable late fees that a landlord may charge a tenant.
Okay, we have a number of folks signed in for this item. So before I take up any motions on this item, I'm going to allow the public to weigh in. And I have Maureen, are the folks who are in e-comment, do we know if they're all here, or if there's a separate list for folks who are on the meeting today?
Well, we have separate folks who made written comments and e-comment, and then there are 3 who signed in to speak, and I think at least 2 of them are here.
Okay, could you, I know at least one of them, if you could private message me their names in the chat, that'd be great.
Okay.
If you know them. Let's see, Molly Martin from Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. Molly, welcome, and would welcome your input. You've got 5 minutes. Please direct your comments to the chair, which is me, and state your name and address for the record. And the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Molly Martin, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. I just want to express my appreciation to the chair and to members of the council for hearing community concerns and for responding so swiftly to protect Lakewood residents through this ordinance. You know, the pandemic has been called the great equalizer. I think it's exposed a lot of problems that have existed for a long time, and especially for people in our community who are experiencing homelessness and for people who are struggling to make ends meet by paying their rent. You know, at NEOC, we get hundreds of calls a week of people who are still waiting on unemployment, people who have applied for emergency rental assistance and their applications taking months to get processed. And, you know, even just in Lakewood alone and around the community in our effort to educate about pay to stay, there were people who wanted to be on this meeting tonight who kind of felt hesitant as renters to come forward publicly in support of it. And, you know, I think that's why NEOC is here. We're here to collectively raise their concerns and their voices, because I think pay to stay is an ordinance that kind of levels the playing field, and it's about fairness. It's definitely something that NEOC sees as a no-brainer legislation. If someone can come up with their rent by the time of an eviction hearing, that defense should be accepted and they should remain housed. I do want to add that even though pay to stay was initially conceived as a short-term remedy to COVID, NEOC sees it as something that could benefit the community permanently, especially given that COVID is going to have long-lasting economic impacts. There was an ordinance passed in Toledo that doesn't have a sunset. You know, Dayton is considering an ordinance on pay to stay that also doesn't have a sunset. And I think, you know, it's important to know that pay to stay doesn't create anything new. It essentially codifies an existing defense that renters can raise. And I think that that's really important because it gives judges and it also gives the community, people in the community, to have the opportunity to turn to something that they could bring up in court. And I think for organizations like NEOC, it gives us the opportunity to educate renters that they do have rights, because no one wants to be evicted or to pull their kids out of school to move if they get evicted and have to double up with family or friends. So I know that the way the ordinance is drafted now, it's set to sunset when the governor no longer issues COVID a state of emergency. But, you know, I do think that that is slated to end possibly this summer or sometime this year. So I would highly, highly encourage for Lakewood to see this as something that is permanent. And I just want to say thank you to the Lakewood residents who are on this call, to being willing to speak up, and for those who submitted comments. And I know that there were some people who wanted to be here that don't have technology access to these meetings. And I think it's great that this meeting is on YouTube Live. And so I just welcome any questions that the council has. And I just really strongly encourage you all to see this as something that would help residents in Lakewood in the long term, given the pandemic's long lasting effects. And given that this ordinance is something that is just fair and should be something that should be offered to residents at any time, regardless of the pandemic. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Molly. And I want to thank you for all your help. I as the person who introduced this, I really give the lion's share of the credit to you and organizations like NEOC who really advocated for this and just were there with all the questions already answered. And as I told Molly when we talked earlier today, you know, when I was first approached about introducing an ordinance like this, I was shocked that it wasn't already the law. Like it kind of stunned me that somebody could go to their landlord with all of their rent in hand, plus and then some, in advance of an eviction hearing, and they could still be evicted despite paying every cent of what they owed. So I think it's really good policy. One of the things that I'm planning to, and I know Councilman Litton wanted to weigh in with a potential solution as well, but I want to possibly amend this ordinance on the floor tonight to mandate that we, just so that this doesn't sort of fade out once the emergency orders expired, for the reasons that Molly mentioned, that it's mandated that council review this within 30 days of the expiration of the emergency order to decide whether we want to make this a permanent change to our code. So again, it would sort of be a required review. We've done that before on other things that we have, other pilot projects, so to speak, that we've done. And in most of those instances, we do decide to make them permanent because we realize, oh, you know, the sky didn't come crashing down because we made this policy change. So just a heads up that I'm planning on making that proposal. And I know Councilman Litton has a proposal as well. But let's continue on with the public comment. We'll go to Ashley Close.
Hi, my name is Ashley Close. I live on Ethel Avenue. I support this legislation in Lakewood because we're an extremely renter-heavy community, and this is legislation that could help people stay housed, find themselves in a situation where they're behind on rent, but they can catch up. I encourage Lakewood City Council to make this ordinance permanent, since the economic impact of COVID, like you said, will last longer than the governor's emergency order. And COVID is just exposing problems that have existed for a really long time. We want to keep people from becoming homeless, and fewer unnecessary evictions means a more stable community in general. Many evictions lead to homelessness or doubling and tripling of households, and this can lead to greater COVID exposure and just general loss of income through the eviction and re-rental process, which perpetuates poverty. So the pay to stay levels the playing field by ensuring that renters do in fact have a right that will be honored in court if they can come up with the money. And this is an important opportunity to let Lakewood renters know that they have these rights. So therefore, yeah, I urge you to make this ordinance permanent.
Thank you very much. And before we go on to our next speaker, I do want to direct council's attention to the e-comments that were submitted. Very, very strong testimony, all of which was in support of this ordinance. The next person signed in to speak is Sarah Gelsomino. Hi, Sarah. Sarah, are
I'm
you?
not sure Sarah made it onto the meeting.
Oh, okay, no problem. Next person is Olawakayode Omoyosi.
Hello. So I go by Coyote. That just makes it easier.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Hi, Coyote. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So my name is Coyote, and I live on Waterbury, not too far from St. Ed's High School. So I really support the pay to stay legislation, especially making it more permanent. Honestly, I believe that people deserve to stay in their homes if they can come up with the money and deal with the fees. As previously said by Molly, COVID is really impacting all of us, and it's especially hard for people who have to find a new job or really scramble to figure out how to pay their bills and stay on top of things. So I really see this as a great step to help keep people from, having to deal with homelessness. And more importantly, it helps keep the community stable. Really, just the fact that it is a reasonable and fair defense for renters is just such a great thing, because sometimes landlords don't want to work with renters that are behind. And, really that goes to contribute towards a certain level of structural inequality that already exists within our society as a whole. So the way I see it is that housing is a human right. And with so many renters really struggling right now, it's more important than ever to make sure that the people that love Lakewood are able to stay here and keep the community healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, are there any other members of the public who are here to speak on this issue tonight? Okay, Councilman Litton, did you want to, I know we didn't get a chance to speak in detail about your proposal.
Well, so much of what our guest speakers this evening have said covers a lot of the issues I wanted to discuss. I think generally, this really just allows someone to pay late a little bit. And when we think about the housing market in Lakewood right now, and the apartment market and the rental market in Lakewood right now, it would be very easy for a landlord to use lateness as an excuse to boot someone and then perhaps charge a higher rent, even if they are able to pay the rent on the lease that they have already signed. And so I intend to propose, but I'm of course willing to work with my colleagues here on considering making this permanent with, as you said, President O'Malley, a mandated review. I would consider two things. One would be a review that's a little further into the future, allow us some time to see how this goes, more than a month. There's always the potential for the state of emergency to be lifted soon. And so I don't want us to be in a position where we have to act or review something before we really know the full impact of it. I also think that the right time to even consider a sunset, if we were going to do one, should be tied perhaps to the eviction moratorium rather than the state of emergency that we've been under for quite some time now. So I would suggest a year, but again, I'm open to discussing it. But a year after either the state of emergency is lifted or the eviction moratorium ends, to review this legislation. I do not think ultimately that this puts Lakewood landlords into a bind, because they're still being made whole on leases that they've signed with their renters, ultimately. And then, we can talk amendments from there, but I'm happy to hear from my fellow colleagues first.
Sure. Councilmember Rader.
Thank you. I fully support the ordinance. In fact, support it even more so with Councilman Litton's addition. And I would go, and I'd probably just ask for a little bit more clarity. I would prefer to make it permanent with the review, just so that in case there were some other emergency, we know that moving from in-person to online, we did that smoothly, but who knows what's going to happen. Would certainly love to make sure that it will continue, even if for some reason we delay in getting to it before some deadline. We only meet every twice a month, and sometimes things can move slow. So I would be in favor of making it permanent with a review. So that would be, but certainly again, support any measure up into that and including that.
Okay, great. Other comments, Mayor George.
Thanks, Council President. Great suggestions. Certainly support the ordinance. Just something else that came to mind. There's an ordinance here later on the docket to end some pandemic-related legislation to end December of 2022. Since this is somewhat tied to the pandemic, perhaps we have it at the same date. So some of our legislation ties together timing wise. And, I'm sure it wouldn't drop off anybody's radar by any means, but it just has a date rather than just an arbitrary date when it's passed this evening. Just a suggestion, but I'm open.
For the outdoor dining item, right?
Yes.
Okay. Other, let's see, Councilmember Schachtner.
Thank you, President O'Malley. I do agree with Mayor George on this point. I think this is definitely not dropping off of our radars. This discussion about whether we want to make it permanent was had during the committee meeting. I think all of us do. I'm not going to speak for everybody. I would like to see it permanent. However, I do want to give an opportunity for somebody to convince me otherwise. I like to give people that opportunity. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think that December 22, just a hard deadline on that. If we meet before then, 3 months from now, 4 months from now, and we decide, heck, let's make this permanent, we could do that. But I do believe that is a proper timeline. It ties into the other legislation, which Mayor George spoke about. And I think we're all going to act in good faith here to try and get something done and make sure. Because the one group I haven't heard from is landlords on this. And although I think it's a completely reasonable legislation that I strongly support, I do want to hear their opinions on it. And I wouldn't feel comfortable extending it for a year prior to hearing their opinions on it, on those members of our community, because we have many landlords that, and yes, I did notice in our written comments that we did have 1 or 2 landlords did speak in support, because many of our landlords are mom and pop shops that are renting out their duplex or one of their floors. And I just want to be able to survey the community on that point, and revisit it maybe in November prior to the expiration. But I think the December 22nd date would work for me. And I just want to do one other point while I have the floor. It's just also in committee, we did amend this ordinance that is not reflected in the version that's in Granicus, that would read that that it would read that any eviction filed during the state of emergency, although all these rules would apply, instead of it just, so that was to prevent somebody from the emergency just ending and somebody filing right at the emergency, or somebody filed prior to the emergency ending, but it wasn't adjudicated until the emergency ended, they wouldn't lose protections. So I just want to make sure that that's included in any version that we do pass, if we're not doing the hard date, but it seems like we're going to do a date, or at least I'm in support of that.
All right, I'm going to ask you to reiterate that in an amendment form once we get to that point. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you on the hearing from landlords. I also didn't really hear from landlords on this, and there was an article on Cleveland.com. I was very vocal about my support for this. If there's an issue of a landlord thinking, well, this is just a temporary thing, I'm not going to weigh in, who cares? But then, 10 minutes before the meeting, we make it permanent forever. I would want to hear, you give folks an opportunity to weigh in. But I do think that Councilman Litton's suggestion is a good one, and could achieve both of those things. Next, Councilmember Neff.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I actually was going to make the comment that Councilman Schachtner did regarding, I think it is important we hear from the landlords, because a single landlord owning a single home and renting it out could be just as vulnerable as the tenant if they're relying on those monies to timely pay their mortgage. So that could be problematic. And I do support the legislation because tenants are typically the ones in the more difficult spot. They typically don't have an attorney. Some of the big landlords who own complexes, are represented where the tenant is, they're fending for him or herself. The way I'm reading this, though, it appears the tenant would be paying a heck of a lot of money in addition to the rent, because the filing fee, I'm not sure, but once the eviction is filed, it's a pretty hefty fee. So that's a lot of money a tenant's going to have to come up with. I just wanted to throw that in there. And yeah, I'm not prepared to make it permanent until we hear from the landlords, particularly the single landlords of one property. And I've also been trying to get a hold of Trish Rooney to really see how prevalent homelessness is in Lakewood, because my understanding is she is working with a lot of the landlords and tenants to prevent that. And I just haven't been able to make contact with her. So I really think it's important we hear from others, although fully support. I never want to see anyone, booted out of their home, because that is just a horrible, traumatic event. Thank you.
Thank you. Our clerk notes that the correct substitute version is in the official docket. Right. The wrong version is simply on the Granicus app, so we won't need to make that amendment after all. Okay, Councilmember Keppel.
Thank you. I was just going to make the same point Councilmember Schachtner made about the amendment. And also, when we were in committee, Councilwoman Neff made that good point about following up with some landlords. I did reach out to a few landlords that I know, because I certainly support this. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't overlooking something that a landlord would see that I wouldn't see. Particularly, we have a lot in Lakewood, small businesses, big business, and we have a lot of neighbors renting to neighbors, just small mom and pop landlords. So thinking about those, in those discussions, I actually had to sort of play devil's advocate. Most of the landlords were like, of course I'd work with somebody. I wouldn't want to kick anybody out. So, which was really great to hear and very Lakewoody. So I was glad to hear that. So I'm encouraged with that. I think the idea of having the sunset align with the outdoor dining proposal keeps things kind of clear. We did make that change regarding for that purpose of making sure that anything filed during the state of emergency, but I think having sort of a hard deadline makes sense, and then we can review it to make it permanent. So I would certainly support that, and I'm glad to see this. We don't want to see anyone who loves Lakewood have to leave it if we can help. So appreciate the thought process and the discussion, and hope to hear from more landlords if anybody has different opinions. But so far, I've been hearing support from our neighbor landlords for this.
And on that point, so Councilmember Litton, am I understanding correctly? So we would have this sunset maybe much further down the road, the end of 2022, and then mandate a review at that point on making it permanent? Or am I misunderstanding?
So my proposal would be to make the legislation permanent, but with a triggered automatic review. I mean, I suppose we could change legislation at any time anyway, you know, with 3 readings. So it's not like anything is permanent technically. But we could, you know, I would amend it to remove the sunset, make the legislation permanent, and set an automatic review time in December of 2022 is what it sounds like might be a decent time to review.
Okay, thoughts on that proposal in particular?
I mean, I would move that for sure.
Okay, there's a motion.
So moved, or do you need me to say it again?
Well,
second then.
Yeah, okay. Now there's a motion on the second. Is that, I'm trying to parse the other input from council members Neff, Keppel, and Schachner to make sure that
Mr. President.
Yeah.
While I understand this legislation has had 3 readings, or this is its 3rd reading, if I'm not mistaken, I'm also respectful of the fact that us adding the permanence piece could make it appear as though this is being sort of sprung on some landlords. So I don't know if we could still perhaps amend it, but not move to adopt just yet, if that's where we're headed, until our next meeting or something along that line, just so that we don't have either the appearance or the reality of having pushed the permanence of this legislation too swiftly.
That's a good idea. The current eviction moratorium does expire on March 31st, assuming it doesn't get extended. We don't meet again until April 5th, but I'm hoping that there aren't, in that very narrow window, you know, any folks who would be negatively impacted by the lack of this protection. But I'm guessing not. And I think we could, you know, especially if we do really want to make sure that we are giving landlords the opportunity to weigh in, given the substantive change that we're proposing here tonight. That's a good option. Molly, can I go back to you? And this is a little out of sorts, but I would give you the opportunity to weigh in here.
Yeah, thank you. I did just want to offer feedback on, you know, part of the education work and advocacy that NEAC's been doing has actually been reaching out to landlords and realtor associations to see how this legislation would impact them, because obviously the policymaking process requires that. I was in a legislative committee meeting in the city of South Euclid who was reading the ordinance there, and the Northern Ohio Apartment Association was present, as well as one of the larger mom and pop landlords. And although they had some concerns about the ordinance, ultimately a council person had asked them, how much would this legislation impact you? And both had said that it wouldn't, for what that's worth. And just to Councilwoman Neff's point, I do want to say in terms of equity, pay to stay, the landlord is made whole by the time of the hearing. So I do understand that a lot of smaller landlords that rely on that income to pay their mortgage, but there is, no situation where the tenant doesn't end up paying the filing fee, which is around $110 on average, plus all of the late fees per day that it's late, and the rent, which has to be paid by the time of the hearing. And there's a forum on Wednesday hosted by the Cleveland State Vital Communities Forum, and I will be presenting along with other groups on pay to stay and source of income. And I know that there's some landlords and associations present there. So I just want to make you all aware that we are trying to do the work in the community so that landlords have the opportunity to weigh in on public forums. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. So there's a motion to, let me pull up the actual. Okay. I'm trying to find the area of this ordinance that deals with the sunset provision.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Director Corrigan.
It is in section 1, right under the "be it ordained by City Council of the City of Lakewood." So section 1 states that any eviction action originally filed during the state of emergency issued by the governor of the state of Ohio due to the coronavirus pandemic, the following shall apply to all residential leases within the city of Lakewood.
Okay.
Now,
I will move to remove the words "during the state of emergency." Or excuse me, let me state this motion, and if it's not consistent with what's already been moved, you can let me know. But the motion is to remove the words "during the state of emergency" and to add a section 2, which states that City Council shall conduct a formal review of this ordinance for the purpose of determining its success and effectiveness no later than December 31st, 2022, and to move section 2 to section 3 and section 3 to section 4. How'd I do, John?
I think in section 1, we'd want to say simply any eviction. If I'm not mistaken, it sort of removes the coronavirus and emergency piece entirely.
Well, that's what we talked about in committee. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think the cleaner version of that would be that section 1 read that any eviction action for non-payment of rent, comma, the following shall apply to all residential leases within the city of Lakewood. So cut out originally filed during the state of emergency issued by the governor of the state of Ohio due to the coronavirus pandemic. So that section, I believe, should read that any eviction action for non-payment of rent filed, comma, the following shall apply to all residential leases within the state of Ohio, or city of Lakewood, I'm sorry.
I'll second that, because those are Dan's words.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
Mr. President?
Councilmember Shackner.
Just a question for Director Corrigan. Let's say we defer this to the next meeting with this amendment. And let's say the eviction moratorium does not get expended past March 31st, is it possible or permissible for us to make this retroactive to a certain date in case we miss anybody within those 5 days that may have been evicted for non-payment, or at least started eviction process for non-payment?
First blush, Councilman, I would say no. I wouldn't say we could make an ordinance retroactive to cover a period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Councilmember Keppel.
I wonder if the way to avoid that gap is just to sort of make the review that build in that the review would happen, that this would remain in effect unless otherwise repealed by council at a review to happen no later than December 31st or something like that. So then we're addressing the review is happening, but this is going into effect as of tonight.
Well, because we would still be making it permanent tonight, though, if we did that, right?
Well, yeah, but we would be then, well, that's true, but it would still be sunsetting. I just want to, I guess to me is more important that we get something in place because we're talking about the urgency of the moment with coronavirus.
Mhm.
And then, we're looking, if we build in, through December 2022 with that review, then it's in place right away, can help people right away.
Personally, Councilwoman, I think that makes the most sense is to do this ordinance so it does have a sunset provision of December 31st, 2022. And at any point along the way, we can review this. And if it's the desire is to make it permanent, we can make it permanent.
That would be my preference too.
So with that being said, the amendment that I would recommend would be essentially the same as to take out the whole that any eviction action for non-payment of rent and then striking originally filed during the state of emergency issued by the governor of the state of Ohio due to the coronavirus pandemic. So going back and reading it as I would amend it would be that any eviction action for non-payment of rent until December 31st, 2022, comma, the following shall apply to all residential leases within the city of Lakewood.
Okay. I'm going to.
Mr. President, quick question. Is it non-payment of rent or late payment of rent? Does it matter?
The action is for non-payment of rent.
Yeah, but they have to, but another part of provision of this is that they would have to pay the whole late amount. So I
correct.
I don't think it's a substantively different, but it's a good point. Okay, I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second. There's one other issue. This doesn't require a motion. It's just a typo, but I do want to bring it to the law department's attention. Let's see, the second page, first whereas, instead of rental assistance, it says renal assistance. And unless we're offering free dialysis, and I'm unaware of it.
And again, I believe that was fixed on the docket version.
Okay.
It's still that way on Granicus, apparently.
Okay, got it. All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, on the amendment.
Block.
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Schachner,
Yes.
That motion passes. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, Mr.
Councilmember,
President.
yes.
I just simply want to thank my colleagues and our friends at NEAC and other guests who have added to a conversation and the sort of unusual nature of us amending legislation on the floor at council. I really appreciate everybody's willingness to work with each other to find something we can all agree upon. Hopefully all agree upon. Thank you.
Great. Okay. I echo those thanks. And Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Block,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes. Sorry.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Schachner,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 10, report from Councilmember Keppel regarding ADA task force.
Councilmember Keppel.
Thank you. So the ADA task force held our first meeting on February 24th. All members save one were in attendance. The main purpose of the meeting was to review sort of the function of the task force, which for those unfamiliar is predominantly to develop the transition plan to make sure that Lakewood is in compliance and both to remove any physical obstacles regarding public city property, as well as to make sure that we have a formal grievance process and an ADA coordinator. The group had some discussion about other accessibility issues as well and potential programs to help businesses remove any barriers for folks shopping locally. We also discussed the need to appoint a chair, which will be coming up at the next meeting. And that's about it. Move to receive and file that oral report.
Great, thank you. I'll second. Any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Block,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Schachner,
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 11, communication from Mayor George regarding extension of temporary outdoor dining.
Mayor George.
Thank you. Members of council, on May 18th, 2020, in response to Governor DeWine's reopening of restaurants, City Council adopted Resolution 2020-31. Generally, this resolution granted the Planning Commission flexibility in the strict application of the zoning code to allow the issuance of temporary conditional use permits for outdoor dining. In return, this created opportunities for restaurants having limited indoor dining spaces due to social distancing standards, the ability to expand seating outside in public and private property in compliance with state and local requirements. As set forth in Resolution 2020-31 and amended by City Council on September 21st, 2020, the conditional use permit authorizing outdoor dining are valid during the duration of the COVID-19 public health emergency. With increased availability of vaccines and continued release of the state-mandated COVID-19 restrictions by Governor DeWine, it is possible the public health emergency will end soon. To prevent the sudden end of conditional use permits for outdoor dining and to allow a recovery period for restaurants, the administration is requesting Resolution 2020-31 to be extended through December 31st, 2022. This date aligns with the temporary expansion of liquor permit premises authorized by HB 669 and enforced by the State of Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control. It's imperative that we continue to support our restaurants through the remainder of this pandemic and give them the tools that allow them to recover businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. And move to receive and file.
Second.
Second, is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Councilmember Schachtner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have to say, Mayor George, I am thrilled by this. I think this is excellent. It's going to do a lot of good for a lot of our restaurants here in Lakewood, and I really have been, really impressed by watching the Planning Commission, the Planning Department, all scopes, Public Works, police departments, all in this experiment of our expanded outdoor dining, and figuring out what that looks like and how we implement it and how it flows within our city. And I am excited to see people continue to be able to dine outdoors and take advantage once the weather gets warm, and hopefully when it's safer to go out, that more people will take advantage of that outdoor dining opportunity, even when it's not absolutely necessary anymore. So I'm excited to talk about this in committee, and thank you again.
Great, thank you. There's a motion and a second to receive and file. Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Schachtner.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 12, Resolution 2020-31B, a resolution to take effect immediately, amending Resolution 2020-31A, adopted September 21st, 2020, extending the authorization of the Planning Commission to grant temporary conditional use permits for outdoor seasonal dining facilities through December 31st, 2022 to qualifying applicants.
Move to defer to the Housing Planning and Development.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Schachtner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 13, communication from Director Dillinger regarding revised salary ordinance.
Director Dillinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear City Council members, I am submitting the attached revision to the salary ordinance for your approval to be effective as signed and passed in accordance with City Charter. I am recommending the following amendments. Add language that allows part-time employees to earn the notary public stipend. This is current practice, as in our part-time employees who have it have been receiving the stipend for years. I confirmed with the offices whose part-time staff have it, and they stated it is important for their part-time staff to have it to perform their job functions and assist their office with daily responsibilities. This language brings us into compliance. Add 2 levels of HR certification stipends. It is in line with certifications for other professional positions in the city and encourages human resources staff to better their knowledge, skills, and abilities and to grow professionally. And finally, to add a stipend for a commercial driver's license, also known as a CDL. Our ASME union staff receive a $50 stipend annually for gaining and maintaining a CDL. It makes sense to offer it to our full-time administrative employees who oversee those employees or who also need to carry it for the function of their jobs. Adoption of this ordinance revision maintains consistency with the contracts being negotiated in civil service regulations. I appreciate your assistance with this matter. Respectfully submitted, Claudia.
Thank you very much. Move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Schachtner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 14, ordinance 22-2020A, an ordinance to take effect on January 1st, 2021 to provide for creating positions and rates of pay for full-time and certain part-time annual salaried employees and hourly rate employees not covered by a collective bargaining agreement in the several departments, divisions, and offices of the city of Lakewood, including the chief of fire, chief of police, and civil service commissioners.
Move to refer to.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I didn't catch what you said for which committee.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Finance Committee.
Thanks.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
Item 15, communication from Director Corrigan regarding Lakewood Park concession lease with Help Foundation, Inc.
Director Horgan.
Dear members of council, following this communication is an ordinance that, if adopted, would extend a concession lease to Help Foundation, Inc. for the provision of food concessions at Lakewood Park in 2021. In 2018, Help Foundation acquired Cornucopia, Inc., a long-standing Lakewood nonprofit organization which continues to provide an important service to the Lakewood community and the community at large. In 2017, 18, and 19, Cornucopia ran the concession operation at Lakewood Park successfully. Last year, COVID-19 prevented the opening of this service. Contingent on the lifting of the public health state of emergency, we want to be prepared to resume this amenity in our park. Under the agreement, Help Foundation would continue to offer high-quality food services at the Foster Pool, Kids Cove snack stand, with possibly a mobile cart at the Solstice Steps, and with sales during Friday Night Flicks and other park special events should they occur. The lease terms have been modified to be contingent upon the lifting of the public health state of emergency. I ask that the legislation be referred to an appropriate committee for further review.
Thank you. Move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 16, ordinance 13, 2021, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an amendment to the concession lease agreement with Help Foundation, Inc. for the operation of food concessions at Lakewood Park pursuant to section 15508 of the codified ordinances.
I think this is the third renewal of this lease, and I believe each time we've reviewed it in the Public Works Committee. I'll make a motion to refer it there.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion to refer to the Public Works and Sustainability Committee? Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 17, communication from Acting Finance Director Schuster regarding revised membership ordinance.
Acting Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear members of council, please find attached an ordinance authorizing professional memberships in an amount not to exceed $95,000 with various organizations and associations for the year 2021. Memberships listed in the ordinance are similar to those authorized by resolution in previous years. The Human Resources Director is asking for one additional membership ordinance that we had not included on the ordinance in December of last year, and that's for the International Public Management Association. Adoption of this amended ordinance in a timely manner will allow the Department of Human Resources to receive federal information in a timely manner that will affect city's personnel. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? None. Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 18, ordinance 29, 2020A, an ordinance to take effect immediately to amend ordinance 29, 2020, adopted December 21st, 2020, authorizing the mayor the Director of Public Works, the Director of Law, the Director of Finance, and our purchasing manager to enter into contracts for memberships as authorized by the 2021 Appropriations Ordinance and the Administrative Code of the City of Lakewood, contracts not to exceed $95,000 without separate ordinance of council.
Thanks. Given that we're simply authorizing the addition of one professional organization that the HR director believes is worthwhile, and that this doesn't change the budget or any appropriation whatsoever, I'm going to move to suspend the rules to allow for the adoption of this ordinance on first reading tonight.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner,
Yes.
That motion passes. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner,
Yes.
That motion passes. Ordinance is adopted.
Item 19, communication from Fire Chief Dunphy regarding severe weather week.
Fire Marshal Fairbanks, are you on for this tonight?
Yes, sir, I am.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear members of council, attached, please find a resolution for your consideration proclaiming March 21st through March 27th, 2021 as Severe Weather Awareness Week. Due to spring break being scheduled at the same time, we have asked Lakewood City Schools to conduct a tornado drill on Thursday, April 1st at 9:50 a.m. The City of Lakewood will sound the outdoor early warning siren, and the Lakewood Fire Department personnel will observe the drill in as many schools as possible. This will be Lakewood's opportunity to ensure the preparedness of our school system and to test our emergency alert system and other components of emergency management. In addition, raising community awareness and allowing for planning of threats such as tornadoes can result in the saving of lives and the prevention of injury. Thank you for your consideration. Respectfully, Timothy P. Dunphy, Fire Chief.
Great, thank you. I will move to receive the file.
Second.
Motion on the second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 20, Resolution 2021-13, a resolution to take effect immediately proclaiming March 21st through March 27th, 2021 Severe Weather Awareness Week.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Thanks as always to the fire department for bringing this resolution forward this year. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Item 21, communication from Public Works Director Dooku regarding Community Recycling Awareness Grant.
Director Duker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear members of council, Mayor George, the city's Division of Refuse and Recycling was awarded $6,000 from the Cuyahoga County Waste District Community Recycling Awareness Grant Program, the maximum grant available through this program. The division will use the grant to produce and mail 29,000 informational magnets featuring current recycling requirements to all 27 plus households in Lakewood, with the remainder being set aside for handouts. The recycling requirements, specifically what can and cannot be recycled, have changed over time. The Division of Refuse and Recycling is aligned with the Cuyahoga County Waste District in its desire to communicate this information and educate our community. To design the content of this distributed material will be approved by the Solid Waste District in addition to the grant from the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. We expect to spend $6,923 to cover the remaining costs of the printing and mailing the approximate 29,000 magnets. Pursuant to Lake Codified Ordinance Section 11114B, the letter serves as notice to our intent to accept these funds. Sincerely, Roman Duku, Director of Public Works.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
And then a second. Councilmember Rader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the administration and Mr. Duku for, this is a topic of conversation in one of our sustainability meetings. We heard from some of the drivers, and I know this is probably already planned the city had, but it was just a phenomenal experience to be able to hear from both the Solid Waste District, people like Dan Brown at Rust Belt Riders, as well as members of the administration on all the things we could do. And this is one of the options that the Solid Waste District's done in the past for Lakewood and did again for us here. But I really want to again commend our city employees for the great work they do hauling our trash every single day and really making a difference on the street where the pavement meets the road, where government meets the people. And this is another example of that. And again, just thank you for that. This is really important that we keep our streams clean so that we keep we can keep our recycling going strong. So yeah, that's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ritt.
All right, there's a motion and a second to receive and file. Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk. Mr. Deputy Clerk, would you like to call the roll?
Pollock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Jacker.
Yes.
Item?
Oh, sorry, I'm back. Internet issue.
Figured.
Thanks, Nick. Item 22, liquor permit notice regarding Kenilworth Tavern at 18200 to 04 Detroit Avenue, first floor and basement.
As is our custom, we defer to the council member in whose ward this establishment lies. In this case, it's Councilwoman F.
I do not have any objection although there are a few issues remaining with this permit. The state is the watchdog and the permit will not pass onto the next individual until those are corrected with the state. So I don't see any reason to object or defer this further. So we're all set.
Great, thank you. Move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
And Mr. Chairman, I believe the motion would be to file no objection.
Oh, okay. Move to file with no objection.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk.
Bullock,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Rader,
Yes.
Shackner.
Yes.
That motion passes. That brings us to the end of our regular agenda here this evening. We'll now move on to the public comment portion. We do have a number of individuals signed up to speak today. Just as a reminder for our rules regarding public comment, each individual is limited to 5 minutes. Please direct your comments to the council president. Please be courteous in your remarks and refrain from personalities, and state your name and address for the record. We'll begin with Greg Palumbo. Hi, Greg. Greg, you're on mute if you can hear me.
Hi, I can.
There you go.
Sorry, I was trying to turn on the video.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. President and Council, for including us today. We wanted to, there's several of us here that'll be following to speak about the Curtis Block building. We've come to you before with our concerns about that structure. The building is part of the heart and soul of Lakewood that we are trying to protect. We try to protect our older buildings, so much so that it came before the city in 2015 to be designated as a historic property in Lakewood, one of just a handful of designated properties that the city feels, collectively, that has historic value, value that should be protected longer than the current residents at the time. What was nice about the current residents at the time is it was the city of Lakewood. So the city was very accommodating of making it a historic property, was understanding of the value of that property as an anchor to the corner, as an anchor to the intersection. One of our few intact intersections that tells the story of Lakewood as a streetcar community, and the incredible boom and growth of Lakewood during that time as the community began building out street by street, house by house. And these buildings, such as the Curtis Block, which housed the grocery store, were vital to that community's growth. We feel that this building has been neglected a bit, as you may have seen in those photos that you remember from the way it looks today versus how it looked in 2015. Back in 2015, the city committed to maintaining that property, so much so that it was a part of our press release, that the property would be maintained, revitalized, and continue its life as a vital part of Lakewood history. The building was constructed by the Hall family, one of the major families in Lakewood, one of the major landowners, part of a 40-acre lot that the Halls had on that spot, a spot that they treasured so much, they built their family home there on that exact spot. So this is, deep roots back to Rockport and up through the city of Lakewood. I know there's a lot of other people that have a lot to say about this building. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that my constituency calls me on a regular basis, wanting to know what the status of that building is. My membership is very invested, as we were in 2015 when we started a letter campaign, as well as other initiatives to get this building registered as a locally designated property. So I will yield the rest of my time to the next person on the list. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Council President, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Next person is Peter Ketter.
Hi, Mr. President, members of council. My name's Peter Ketter. I'm a Lakewood resident. I'm the current chair of the Lakewood Heritage Advisory Board. So we oversee these local designations and make recommendations to the Planning Commission. As Greg mentioned, this is one of, I believe, 13 individual properties at this point that have been designated as historic by the city of Lakewood. So it's really a small number, and that just reinforces the significance of this building. And certainly myself and the other members of the Heritage Advisory Board are also very interested in the fate of this building and seeing it preserved. And it's one that is regularly discussed at our meetings. And I do want to say that Director Leininger has been very good about informing us of what's happening. But still, in between meetings, monthly meetings, I'm getting regular questions from my board members about what's happening with the building and what the status is. So it's really at the forefront of concern in the local reservation community, and we just want to make sure that this stays on the front burner with the city. So again, thank you all for considering this, and I'll hand it off to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. The next person signed in to speak this evening is Paula Reed.
Good evening. Thank you so much for listening to us this evening and our concerns about the Curtis Block. It hasn't been that long since we discussed this issue, but it seems as though things have sort of stalled. I have great concerns about the condition of the building and its continued deterioration, with the fact that it's still not watertight and nothing seems to be happening there. I've been monitoring this building for many years. We actually used it as the final stop on our first chocolate walk in 2009. So it's been a long time that it's been vacant. It was definitely a usable building at that time. We used it for several things on behalf of the Downtown Lakewood Business Alliance over the years. And so I was in and out of there frequently and just watched it deteriorate, reported on it, protested when they decided to turn the heat off in the building. The building has just really suffered from poor maintenance over the years. And it's the same track we saw with the skate house. The Historical Society, with which I'm also involved, used that for our sale on the grounds, accumulation and sorting of items. And we reported regularly when we started to see the roof leaking. And it just continued to leak for years until it got so bad that it rotted the interior structure. And you can see where it is now, gone. And I just think it's disconcerting. And I understand that it's not this administration's problem that what happened in the past, but yet it is, because this is a building that the city owns and should be looking after the way we all try to look after our own old houses. So just a plea for this building and its historic and architectural significance. Also, it's important to the downtown corridor. Having that there is continuity for the merchants who are farther east on the street. It just maintains the traffic. And if we could reactivate that building, it would assist with all of the businesses further east from there. So thank you very much for listening.
Muted, Dan.
I'll learn. Let's see. Ken Haber is the next person signed in to speak.
Good evening, Mr. President and the council. And as a 40-year resident, appreciate your service, serving on the serving. My name's Ken Haber. I live at 17897 Lake Road. I served as a trustee on the Lakewood Hospital Association. I was the chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. I also the past president of the Lakewood Hospital Foundation. What I'd like to talk to you tonight about is a little history, but with regards to the ownership and the finances. Back in the late 2014, early 2015, the Lakewood Hospital Association was approached as the owners to support the application to designate the Curtis Block building as a historical building property. We did that. And I think around the spring of 2015, that application went through the process that the city used, and it was approved and it was granted sometime, I think, early summer or before that. I also believe at that same time period, the building was inspected at that time. I think maybe Heather Rudge can expound on that later, but at that point, if I recall correctly, the building was in good condition at that time. The master agreement, as you all are aware, was signed on December the 21st, 2015. And I want to reference two sections of that master agreement. The first one is section 5.6, specifically addresses the Curtis Block building. And it states in part, concurrently or promptly after the closing of the sale of the Family Health Center site, Lakewood Hospital Association will convey the property known as the Curtis Block building and any other residential homes owned by Lakewood Hospital Association to the city for the purchase price of $1. The following year, in February of 2016, the title of that building, of the Curtis Black building, was transferred to the city. I would like to add that at that point, the city was aware of the designation of that property and the importance of it and the responsibility it took on as the owner of that. The other section in the master agreement I refer to as section 6.2 with regards to the funding. And again, I'll read that in part. The city will be paid $7 million for the demolition and or the redevelopment of the Lakewood Hospital building and other structures, which would include the Curtis Black building on the current hospital site. I looked at the financials as of December 30th of last year that the city posted. And in the Lakewood Hospital Fund, it indicates that there's unencumbered balance of over $10 million. So I asked the city respectfully to exercise their responsibility as the owner of this building and to protect and preserve the historical property, this property that presides in the city of Lakewood. Certainly the city has the funds to do so. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time and listening.
Thank you. Next person signed in to speak this evening is, I just lost my list here. Next person signed in to speak this evening is Mary Ann Crampton.
Thank you, President O'Malley, and good evening to you and to all the members of council. So, you know, it's already been 10 years since I left my position as executive director of Lakewood Alive. And for the entire 4-year period that I served in that role, which included preserving the historic nature of our downtown, preserving and revitalizing our historic downtown district, the Curtis Block was a point of discussion. And we always led with the adage of that neglect would lead to, well, demolition by neglect, right? That's what we were looking at here, right down the street from our offices. And, you know, 10, 14 years later, and not much has changed. However, you know, a couple of months ago, I listened in on a meeting on the subject of the Curtis Block with some of you. I don't know if it was all of you. And I came sort of, you know, I heard it was, this meeting was going to happen and we're going to talk about the Curtis Block again. And it's kind of the same thing where we get of our emotion up and our desire to protect this extremely significant piece of property again. And I was so delighted by the response of the current council people. It was just an amazing meeting. It was to a person. You all reflected an appreciation for the work that needed to be done there and the value of that, and a very practical approach with regards to the costs and the finances that required to make that happen. And yes, it did, you know, land in your lap, but I was just absolutely delighted. You know, I was saying to someone, I can't believe that we're still talking about this. So on one hand, I'm thankful we're still talking about it, that the building's not gone, but that's what's next, right? If we just let it go, you know, I'm not saying that anyone's threatening to tear it down or anything, but it will continue to deteriorate without investment and attention. So thank you for giving this opportunity for all of us to speak tonight, and I'll support any efforts that you make to preserve and act on protecting that building. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Heather Rudge.
Thank you, President O'Malley and members of City Council. I will sort of wrap up the comments. I do want to thank Director Leininger for his communications over the last few months, trying to keep me informed about things, you know, sort of moving along. But, you know, it's been a lot of months since the problem of the roof leaks was brought to the city's attention. And I know that the latest information I got from Director Leininger was that he was waiting for communication from Public Works on the costs of doing a roof from the city's roofing contractor. But that report that came out from the consultant was in September, and we are in the middle of March with the rainy season approaching. My intent tonight is to try to get the Curtis Block back on the front burner so that something can be done in the very short term to stop the water infiltration into this building. As a volunteer in the community and other volunteers, we have donated our time and our efforts and our expertise to try and help the decision makers of this community be as informed as possible about what the options are to save this building, to button it up from the weather, and to rehabilitate it down the line. I understand that right now your intent is to tie it to the Casto project, and I fully respect that decision. But in the short term, something must be done to stop the water infiltration into that building. There is absolutely no excuse that can be given to, justify the lack of stewardship on a city-owned landmark building. We are all just asking for the city to take the responsibility for a historic property in the same way that the city would expect us as homeowners and building owners to keep up our buildings. And it really needs to be a more timely and immediate discussion as the rainy season is going to start and make things worse in the building. A couple of us work with historic buildings as our profession, and nothing that we have seen in that building is beyond repair. But the longer you let it leak, the more expensive it's going to be for someone. So I just urge you to put this back on the front burner and deal with this problem immediately and straight on, and as quickly as possible. Thank you. And if anybody has questions for any of us, we're happy to answer those questions.
Thank you very much for being here tonight and waiting through a particularly long meeting to make your comments. Mayor George or anyone in the administration, would you care to comment?
Yes, I can talk a bit, and then I'm going to ask Director Leininger to provide an update on where we are. I just want to start off by saying I certainly echo the sentiments that you brought here, most of you, and Greg specifically, on the historic nature of this building. I've said it once, I'll say it again, I'll say it a dozen times. I have a passion for historic preservation, and that's just not lip service. I truly, truly do. And I'll say that this has never left the front burner. We continue to have discussions about this very often. Myself and Director Leininger meet about it quite often. And we're hoping to come to some sort of resolution here soon. And again, I'll have Director Leininger talk to the specifics on that. And regarding the site development, as you know, this building was part of the original redevelopment of the former hospital site plan. So as we pivot to Casto, that's where we're looking to first, is for Casto to come in, and we are working with them, and we've worked up some cost estimates with Casto on keeping the building, on a possible other saves of the building. But I'm going to turn it over to Director Leininger to stay where we're at in regards to some of the other points mentioned. I'll also say, if you have any sort of questions or concerns, I know Heather, I know Peter reached out to Director Leininger. Please reach out to our team. We want to keep open lines of communication. I know Paula, you mentioned that we've done nothing. And I'm sorry, that's just simply not accurate. So I please ask you to reach out to myself or the team anytime, because this is an important building to the community, and we certainly are doing everything we can to preserve it. So Director Leininger.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to reiterate the mayor's point about this has always been on the front burner for the city as we've continued our conversations back from our original discussion with council on this and on November 24th at the committee of the whole meeting. As we then moved forward with Casto, if it's not the first thing that we talk about in every call we have with them, it's probably number two. And so it has been and remains a priority for the city to find a path forward for this building. And so if maybe I'll go backwards and then come back forward with this, just to remind everybody, when we had that committee of the whole meeting on November 24th, we were very open and transparent in the fact that we had this report in hand that suggested that there was going to have to be millions of dollars in investment in the building just to fix a roof and to fix the foundation. We recognize that, but we also then, before we commit to committing those types of funds into the building, we needed to understand what the path forward was going to be. And at that time, back in November, we were in the process of pivoting to Casto, the new developer for the hospital site. It was a month later, actually on December 21st, when council authorized that pivot over to Casto. Shortly after the holidays, we got with Casto, we started to have our conversations. We're starting to progress a lot faster now, but the first thing that we talked about on that call was about the Curtis block, and having them kind of walk us through and see where they want to go. Over a couple of meetings, we started to identify that path forward, and we engaged then, as we started to have that path, we engaged with the city's contractor. As the mayor had noted, we have a roofing contractor, WTI, that the city works with Public Works on different projects. We engaged with them. Unfortunately, at the time we engaged with them, we had snow cover that had already taken over on the building. And we've been under snow cover for really about 10 weeks of this year. And so that added some delays to be able to get a roofing contractor up there to get up and assess the situation. Really what our goal is to try and find a temporary roofing solution for the building to buy us some time while these larger conversations and discussions take place. Recognizing that we may not be able to completely stop the water from coming in, but we can certainly stop most of it. And if we get lucky, we can stop all of it, at least for a short period of time while this takes place. So a lot has happened in the last 48, 72 hours. With the roofing contractor was up there in March, beginning of March. It was March 3rd. They went up. They had some real concerns about the condition of the roof and how they could execute a temporary roof on the building. And so they connected us with one of their affiliates who has also now been up on the roof and reached out to us on Friday. And we played a little bit of phone tag today and finally were able to catch up and talk through some options. We hope to have some of those options laid out in the form of a proposal later this week, hopefully by the end of the week, and then we'll have something that we can actually look at, execute, and make some decisions on. So that's where we're at. I know when Peter and Heather and others we've had individual conversations and together had conversations with the Lakewood Heritage Advisory Board. And I apologize in those conversations that it was perceived that this wasn't at the front burner for our actions, but it has always been, and we're trying to find a solution that'll at least buy us some time and get us to a preservation solution, which I think we're going to have with Casto. But there's a lot of process that has to go between now and then too. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. And I certainly would encourage, as the mayor indicated, anyone to follow up with her or with Director Leininger or anyone on council for that matter. Appreciate you being here tonight and for your input and your dedication to this landmark. All right, we'll turn now to announcements from the administration. Announcements from council. Did I miss you, Sean? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was too slow on the trigger, sorry. Okay. Just a reminder, next Tuesday, I believe that's the 23rd, is our next meeting for Cove Church, 6 o'clock. Check the city calendar for the link to that meeting. But that'll be the second and final public meeting regarding Cove Church.
Thanks, and that's a good segue into, I'll be hosting a meeting 2 days later on the 25th, along with Mayor George and representatives from our police department, a Birdtown neighborhood safety meeting. I want to thank the Chief Kowchek, Fire Marshal Fairbanks and his department for the quick response following the unfortunate incident that occurred last week on the basketball court at Madison Park. We're going to be talking in depth with residents, block clubs, friends of Madison Park, and just residents and business owners in the neighborhood about safety there. So greatly appreciate the quick response from our first responders last week, and for everybody in the community who has expressed interest in putting a renewed focus on safety. I think the reason that this shooting was newsworthy is because it's become so rare. We had our violent crime and property crime rates in Lakewood are at their lowest levels in modern history, and but we need to work at that. We need to be working hard and ever vigilant about maintaining tranquility and safety in our neighborhoods. And so we're going to be having a good discussion next Thursday. This will be held via Zoom. Please contact the council at lakewoodoh.net to get a link to the Zoom meeting, and we'll look forward to having a good discussion next week. Other announcements from council? All right, hearing none, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Black,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Layton,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Schachner.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.